Ever think, man, I wish I knew that sooner? Trust me, you're not the only one. I'm Allyn Rose, and welcome to Learn Too Late. Cindy, thank you so much for joining us on the Learn Too Late podcast. You are the founder of Sprout Pharmaceuticals, which is the company behind ADDYI. You are often called with ADDYI the female Viagra, and I know that you have your qualms with that sort of descriptor, which I've seen in some of your other interviews. But something incredible about you is that you initially sold your company for $1 billion and then got it back. All the headlines say you sold it for $1 billion, got it back for free. So I would love to hear from the horse's mouth who you are, why you do what you do, where your inspiration comes from, and just thank you so much for joining us and for really being a champion for women everywhere.
Oh my gosh, Allyn, like from you, that is the biggest compliment. I've been waiting to do this too with you. You're such a role model of advocacy for women. And I think at the core of everything I do, that's really the heart of it, right? Is I think the through line of all of my work in my professional career has been probably advocating for my own worth and what I deserve. And, when I find the things that I feel like I'm entitled to, I have a right to these things, I tend to be the champion of other women having that similar right. So I'm a bit of a nomadic kid. I grew up, we talked a little bit offline about our dads. I was born, I'm very much my father's daughter, born to a true adventurer. He moved me my whole childhood. So fourth grade through my senior year of high school, I moved every year. That got me really comfortable being uncomfortable. So you can imagine the perpetual new kid showing up. And I tease him today, like, were you just secretly like conditioning me to be an entrepreneur? Because I think the things I've taken on and tackled have often been, as you so described at the beginning, like sometimes seen as taboo topics, although I can't figure out why, right? Like, why wouldn't we? None of us would be here without sex. I've spent the bulk of my career in sexual health, and yet remarkably, we still don't talk about it. And so when I kind of grew through the ranks in traditional companies and worked on the cool side of innovation and everything, and finally decided, why am I doing this for other people? I'm going to do it for myself, and had the nerve to go out and build my first company. If you're looking at this, like not really like the classic pharma CEO, I didn't fit the mold. So I didn't get like kind of classical funding, which has always, forced me to be scrappy about it and figure out how to go and really champion the right things, choose wisely, and get behind them. And I built one of the companies in men's sexual health. So I found this technology in men and was in that space and frankly loved it for the difference it made in people's lives, loved what we would hear for patients when you can repair this piece of intimacy and connection. But a big thing happened to me now 15 years ago when they first showed some scientific data on what it is that could unlock desire for women. And I will tell you, it struck me like lightning. Like in that moment, I thought, hold on. I'm running a company to help men lead more satisfying sex lives. There are 26 FDA drugs for that and not a single one for women. How can this be in the face of science? So that's who I am. Who I am at my core is an advocate, and particularly passionate about championing things that others run away from. I tend to run toward them.
Well, I loved this quote that I had read from you where you said that there is this societal narrative around pleasure is a man's to receive and a woman's to deliver.
Yes.
And I just found that to be such a poignant topic on how we as women view sexual health, intimacy, libido. It's always to be giving something to someone and not something to be seen as important for us. And we talked a little bit, prior to this podcast about how so many women, when they have issues with libido or sexual health, they go into their doctor's office and the doctor says, it's all in your head.
Yes.
So how have you worked to sort of fight back against that narrative? And I think what would be your advice to women as well on how to be able to better advocate for themselves, maybe in a doctor's office, if they are suffering from something like this?
Well, your sexual health, there's a great study out of Harvard. It's actually the largest in history. And it's, all these years later, 85 plus years later, they started collecting data on people. They wanted to follow them over time to figure out what's like the key predictor of longevity. And so they followed people when they got married, they followed them and their spouse. When they had kids, they followed them, their spouse, and their kids. Like, it is the largest collection of data over time. And they kept coming back to the same thing. Like, every blood test, every scan, everything they did. And the scientists were kind of like, this can't be it. And the answer was, it was the quality of your closest relationship is the single biggest predictor of your overall health, your physical and your mental health. Actually, the state of your relationship, your closest relationship at midlife, is the best predictor of where you'll be at 80. Your sexual health matters. That's what I want to say first and foremost to anybody listening to it. Like, don't think it's just this nice to have. It's a need to have. It's actually core to your physical and mental well-being, and science proves that. And I think that I've always stood on science, right? I had that moment, like I said, 15 years ago, they were showing brain scan imaging of women who were struggling with their libido, and they were comparing them to women who were like, I'm not on all the time. I'm not, ebbs and flows. Like, let's be real. But like, nothing's changed. And then you took this cohort of women who were like, I don't know what happened. It's like the switch went out. Like, I don't think about it. I'm not interested. I mean, I love my partner, right? This is the two descriptions. Put them in an MRI, expose them to erotica, their brains light up totally differently. Wow. Totally differently. And the whole scientific community was like, oh, biology. And you're like, how? Of course we're biologically wired to have desire and to have interest. And the idea that for women, we would instead pat you on the shoulder and tell you, oh, just schedule date night. Oh, just wear sexier lingerie is so out of touch with science. We must demand better.
Well,
we are biological beings.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said once that, women are brain flow, men are blood flow. Yes. And I think that was really the hot line that got me. And it's yes, absolutely. I think that obviously libido and sexual attraction is a topic that we talk about as moms. When you first become a mother, you get married, you're a couple years down the line, and now you are responsible for being the emotional, psychological, physical, everything for this other entity outside of your romantic relationship with your partner.
That's right.
And then you have these sort of, tone-deaf partners who are just not understanding why their partner is not coming to them revving to go. But when you've given all of yourself in every aspect of who you are, that's just not the first thing that's on your mind. And the way that you help a woman maybe get back into this other stage of her life is taking away some of those stressors, putting her back into a state where you can have a calm nervous system, you can relax, you can feel sexy. Yes. And I think that it's a really sad thing because it's something we all as women, we talk about behind closed doors.
Yeah,
and
we do.
We almost feel more comfortable talking to friends about it than we do talking to the intimate partner that we've brought life into the world with. And that is kind of crazy to think about. But yeah, for women, so much of it is mental, but there are obviously physical things that are leading to yes. a loss of libido. And I think that's not to be ignored. And I know in the breast cancer community, I've had these conversations with women a lot where they say, I've had a mastectomy, whether it's preventative surgery like I had or because of a cancer diagnosis. And afterwards, their libido tanks. Yes. And their doctors again say, yeah, it's a body image problem. It's all in your head. You're just recovering from this and that. And I know I went to my doctor and said, hey, I look better than I did before. I have no problem with the way that I look. This is not a self-esteem issue. Yeah. My body has just been ripped of a significant portion of breast tissue, of estrogen, all of these things that add towards our biological functioning and our libido. So what is ADDYI doing? How does it work? Obviously we don't want to dive too scientifically, sure. Down that road, but I would love to hear where this concept came from and, how does it function? Because I know a lot of women hear, okay, maybe there's this pill that can help me, but they want to understand what does it actually do?
Yes, perfect. And listen, I would say in all of those cases you just described, and I do want to come back to like the partner of it all, because I think one of my privileges is I've gotten to see the aha come at both sides, both the
Right.
person struggling with this issue and the partner. And like actually the relief that comes when you realize like your biology can betray you, right? Your biology can betray you. And we are wired biologically to desire sex. That's in the reward center of the brain. And the scenarios you described, right? Postpartum, even when your hormones have normalized again, this can be kicked off kilter. Post breast cancer treatment, right? Often, if you're on, a Arimidex or on, tamoxifen, like there can be an interruption of some of this. Again, that center of the brain that is responding to sexual cues, exactly the thing in those brain scans that we were observing, like they weren't responding, like that center of the brain wasn't activating in response, right? So that's biology. That's biology at play. And that's really ADDYI works. ADDYI's a mood drug. Like ADDYI was discovered, it was originally studied as a mood drug. And I think this is helpful for your whole group thinking like, okay, there's this thing that could help me. What would it do? What it's doing is it's working in that reward center of the brain that percolates and ignites in response to sexual cues. It's where you have like spontaneous thoughts and fantasy. Like what makes you see the sex scene in the movie and be like, "Ooh, I like that. Like let's go do that."
Is it dopamine related? I know we talk a lot about that.
Serotonin, yes. So it's working on that dopamine serotonin complex. Let's talk about something probably the whole audience knows. Antidepressants, right? What are the most common products that work on dopamine serotonin? What's their most common side effect? They decrease your libido. That's their number one. So ADDYI is simple. Here's the thesis. We had a ton of these drugs that worked on dopamine and serotonin. And what they cause is while they elevated mood from their dopamine effect, their effect on serotonin actually inhibited your interest in sex. ADDYI's distinction is it has the positive on dopamine, but it has a different effect where in terms of the serotonin receptor, it's removing that inhibition. So it's actually having you have interest. It's safe to use. If you use one of those antidepressants, you can use ADDYI with it. But importantly, like that's how it's so easy to understand. Like there's this one it factor that is opposed to depressing sexual function, increases sexual function. And that's why like women in our trials, we had to show three things. So we showed that we increased their desire to have sex. That's measured by, scientific instrument we won't explain. The second piece is when they had sex, was it satisfying to them? Like, did this improve the quality and frequency of sex for them? That answer was yes. And really importantly, and not surprising once you understand where this is all working, we reduced their distress. So like women who are struggling with libido issues, I mean, ADDYI's a mood drug. You're really like often struggling, right? Personally, interpersonally, like this is where resentments can often begin around around money, around what are the common things with marriages, or relationships. And so like showing that effect also, I think is so important. And that really speaks to the dopamine effect.
So is this something that you could take if you were also on a stimulant for something like ADHD?
Yeah.
Or is it double dipping your dopamine?
No, it's fine. We looked at that. We knew, obviously as like a table stakes for FDA approval, we were looking at, the population. What does this population typically take? And it was everything from hormones to, if they could take systemic hormones to be it birth control, be it postmenopausally, antidepressants, other meds. Like you population match in our age band, what people typically take. And so, our drug interactions are more like antifungals. Typically, if you're on a dose of antifungal, you skip it. But like all of that's listed on our website, but safe to take with another sort of dopamine, a drug that has effect on dopamine.
So I would love to talk to you more from an entrepreneur standpoint. So you're obviously wearing pink. You're known as the pink CEO. I've worn my pink here. I've got a glass of pink champagne. I'm doing all of the things for the theme of this podcast.
Love it.
I would love to talk to you about foresight as an entrepreneur. And I am a serial entrepreneur. I am an ADHD mindset. I'm floating from thing to thing. Like I find something, I master it, out the door, onto the next thing. And I've done this my entire life. And I've learned a lot in business of what are things that I need to do? Ironclad contract, think
Mm,
about the long term, really trust no one.
yes.
And I think that your story was so inspiring to me when I first heard it. Um, Reading about the negotiations that you did when you first sold your company and what allowed you to reacquire it in the way that you did.
Yeah.
So maybe stepping aside from, the pharmaceutical and what it does and into your entrepreneur hat, I would love to hear that backstory of having this great idea, having the product, having the company, getting up to being acquired, and then how everything came out afterwards. Because obviously, I know your story, but I would love for other women who are listening to this to hear about that and how that little bit of forethought that you had made the difference in
Yeah.
really the future of this product.
When you say trust no one, you saw me, I laughed out loud. I mean, there is something about being an entrepreneur and like really having to think of like down the field, like what's the play that's coming. So you live and you learn. I want to say I sold my first business. I sold it like so typically, this is all the entrepreneurs that are listening, take notes right now, right? The first time you sell it, you often have like an upfront payment, and then hopefully you're on such a growth trajectory that you're participating in the take on the back
Mm,
end. It might be royalties, it might be milestone payments. And the way that's going to be written is going to be a contract, and the back end of that is going to be governed by the most basic legal language, which is the best efforts clause. And here's the deal. You need to ask yourself, do you think as an entrepreneur, your best efforts are the same as someone else's? I already
that,
know the answer.
say it louder for the people in the back, please.
You know, the entrepreneur's like, what are you doing? I would have gotten that done by noon today. It's so really, even though that first deal was good for me, I had that mistake the first time I sold a company. And so the second time when I sold, we also got an upfront payment, but we wrote really specific obligations to what governed the back end. So they had to do things that were not big asks, right? How much money are you going to spend to market? How much education are you going to do of doctors? How much, et cetera? And they mapped that plan for us. And then when they didn't do it, they were in breach. And that is what gave me the leverage to go back and get it back. So I got it back. Can you imagine? We sold it for $1 billion upfront.
Insane.
They're really important back end to it. So we got the cash. They didn't ever launch. I mean, the devastating story of it is they didn't launch it. Like, we'd fought so hard, 26 products for men, finally one for women. I was so proud women were going to, and then women couldn't get it. And
Wow.
so, like, really, I think that ignited something in me as well. And so got that opportunity, ended up suing them because they were in breach. And in exchange for dropping the lawsuit, they gave the product back. Now, we kept all the money and we've invested that in
We love to hear it. As you should.
right. But of course, because people have to honor those contracts. And I think, everybody talks to me, even when they think about selling their company, like what's the right time? Who's the right banker? I would tell you more important than anything, of course, is who's the right lawyer and writing that contract in a way that is ironclad, especially when I know it's your baby. Like, this is my baby, right? Nobody was going to mistreat my baby. And so hopefully that's a tip that others take away and write those specific performance obligations when you sell your businesses.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I went to law school when I had moved. This was always my dream to be a lawyer. And so I think I always had this sort of legal mindset.
Yes.
But obviously, I'm not a practicing attorney. But knowing the importance of setting contracts in place that protect you for
Yes.
not only the things that you can foresee, but for things that you cannot. And that's what an expert, a consultant, somebody
Yes.
who is an expert in these sort of things is going to be able to allow you to position yourself that way. And what a shame it would have been if
Yeah.
for this product to just go by the wayside
Go to
because
the shelf. Yeah.
correct.
I think our story is full of folklore. I maybe I should have imagined that with the first ever drug for women's pleasure.
Right.
You said that front, like pleasure has a certain loaded, context in our society. But like, imagine if we'd fought that hard and women still couldn't access it. Like, it wasn't what I set out to do. This was actually never about a blockbuster drug selling it. It was about changing this conversation forever around women's sexual health and actually using that as a gateway to level a playing field more broadly in women's health overall.
I'd also like to talk to you about being a woman in the pharma space, in a male dominated space,
Yeah.
and being as unapologetically you as you are. I think so many of us as women, when we get into corporate spaces, we want to mute everything.
That's right.
We want to kind of fly under the radar. We want to be taken as seriously as possible. I mean, hey, I even have a pair of glasses in my drawer for a certain type of meeting because I know that I'm talking to a certain type of person
Right.
that if
Right.
I come on with teeth, tits, and hair and the whole shebang, I'm not going to be taken seriously. And that is a sad reality that we live in. But you are going against the grain in every possible way. And I think so much of that is tied around into this aspect of walking into a boardroom or a pitch or doing anything that you do in such a female dominated color, naming or having this as the color for your product.
Yeah.
Where do you find the courage and the follow through when you may feel I might be better positioned if I muted things a bit?
Yeah. Look, my pink pisses people off. Let me be really clear. I mean, I go into rooms, especially in my industry, and they're like, oh, they let you in a little bit. And maybe this is your whole, learn too late. Like I got all the same feedback at the beginning. Pull your hair back, take the makeup off, wear the black pantsuit. They're not going to take you seriously. And then at some point I decided, regardless of what I do, I'm an outlier and they're never going to give me that credit. They're always going to underestimate me. So I'm going to lean right into everything that they think because this is the conversation we need to have. Like even when I was going through with Addie, it's like the little pink pill, the little pink pill, the little pink pill. And actually what they really were saying was something dismissive underneath it. And what's funny is like, I think you get two choices in moments like that, right? Like in these moments where you're being diminished or underestimated, it either does force you to sort of lean back away from it, shrink away from it, or conform, or else you make a decision to lean right into it and say, this is what we're going to talk about. And I think that's why my pink got brighter and brighter as I was going through the FDA. I think, I've got something to say. I am unapologetically who I am. If it pisses you off, that's a you problem. That's not a me problem.
I love that. I remember this one line a couple years ago. My younger brother said to me, if you get any more bold, you're going to be the most interesting thing about me. And it was such a special moment. And I know it came from this very thoughtful place because he's not the type of person that is loud and goes out and hops on a stage. Like he's definitely not the kid that performed for his parents in the living room. Like just not that kind of person. But it really made me feel seen because he knew that is who I am and that's who you are. And I think you are doing yourself a disservice by toning it down in every single scenario if you are not wholly yourself. And I think that these great ideas and these big moments, like you being able to reacquire Addie, they don't happen in a muted version of yourself.
They don't. Can I share a story? I have to tell this story. There was a guy at the beginning of all of this. And look, I've had wonderful male supporters. It doesn't, guy, girl, whoever, some of my loudest detractors are women who are mad that I wear pink. But he really laughed me out of a room. Like really early on, like I was in the early days of Addie and Sprout, and like he really, in a mocking kind of way, laughed me out of this room, and it left an impression with a lot of people. And I had a choice to make in that, right? Am I going to hold a grudge forever? Am I going to be so mad? Don't think for a minute I didn't pick up the phone and be like, oh, I gave you a billion reasons to believe. Have I given you a billion reasons to believe in me? Because that's a fun call to make. But even without that and all that intervening time, he's an important guy in the industry. I always kept in touch. I always left the door open for him to do better, in essence, the next time. And really, this came full circle when I started investing through the pink ceiling. He came to visit me in my office. Like it actually makes me emotional to this day. And you can imagine my office is like hot pink chairs. There's really a pink ceiling. It looks like this. And he sat down in the boardroom, and he's still in his like,
Buttoned
great.
up.
He's like, and he said, we got started, and he's like, Cindy, I have something to show you. And he lifted up his pant leg, and he had on pink socks, hot pink socks. And
Oh
it was
my
this
God.
moment of like the tip of the hat. It's like your brother's
Right.
was like, I see you, and I will never make that mistake again. And I promise you, he's co-invested with me in other women's health companies. And like, you leave people the room to do better. You never mute yourself, but you also give opportunity to other people who've underestimated or counted that out to catch up.
Yeah, and I think that that is such an important a piece of advice, because I think especially today with social media and the way that we communicate, we're inspired to burn bridges
Yeah.
and to be petty and
Yeah.
to make people hurt when they hurt us.
Yes.
And I've really tried my whole life to just, my mom always said to me, doing well is the best revenge. And that has sat in the back of my mind. And anytime somebody doubted me or belittled me, or, I got fired from like a coffee fetching job once, I just said, I'm going to do better and be better. And that person is going to regret not believing the hype. And
That's right.
I think if you're the type of person that always somewhere in your soul feels like I'm exactly who I think I am, there are going to be other people who hate that because they
Yes.
do not have that confidence in themselves. And
Yes.
seeing you have that confidence is like looking in the mirror and is a reflection of their own insecurity.
That's right.
But that's hard. I think especially when you're young or you're starting out in business and you don't have those tangible wins, those notches, to be able to say, well, hey, look at what I did.
Right.
And it takes that long-term perspective to get down the road, and then it gets a little bit easier and it gets a little bit easier.
It does. It does.
Is
Being
there
under
any
is an invitation to surprise people, though. As soon as you flip that in your brain, whether you're at the beginning of your career or well into it with perspective, once you gamify that, once you see that as a competitive advantage, everything changes. So it's really, I think, the story you tell yourself in that when you're being like, it's the self-talk, exactly as you said, where you're like, I'm going to go out and I'm just going to be the best at this. And I'm going to follow through on everything I say I'm going to do. And I'm going to leave the door open for you. Like, I think that's what, the greatest satisfaction comes through doing that.
when what you just said, leaving the door open for you, people also don't expect you to be kind, especially when they haven't been.
Mm-hmm.
And that really throws them off when you lead with kindness, or maybe not even kindness, but just neutrality.
Yeah.
And you're not burning the house down as you walk out the front door. And it's exactly like you said, you would be surprised who comes out of the woodwork down the road to either say, yeah, I was wrong, or now they want to work with you. They want to support you. They want to be part of the vision because now they understand the hype.
Yeah, agreed.
And they've got it. And that's another thing I always bring up these adages from my mom. And just, I was a total offbeat kid growing up, played guitar in a punk rock band. Nobody would sit next to me at the lunch table, that kind of person. And, I'd come home in tears after, middle school and high school. And she'd say, they just don't get you yet, but they will.
What a good mom.
It was a little bit of putting lipstick on a pig and, figuring out, how to present myself to the world, and that turning weird into quirky and these sort of things. It was all branding. It was just reframing and pivoting. And, I think that's also hard for young people who feel like maybe they haven't found their niche yet. And I'd love to hear from you how you knew this is what you wanted to do with your life. What was that moment? Was there a moment? Maybe it was just, pick something that you're good at and stick with it. Also fine. But was there a moment for you where you said, I think I've got something here?
Oh, I love that question. First of all, I want to move my camera to see if you can see quirky literally written on.
Oh my God, love it.
Quirky
Soul
is like
sisters here.
so soul sisters. I mean, really almost a core value of even everyone I've ever hired to my team. Like I say you have to make 6 choices to work for me. One of them is to choose to be quirky. And of course, that's a weird, like, how do I show up today and choose to be quirky? I think what I'm really saying is yourself, like truly the individual you are. Like once we start to try to be same, we lose all of our inherent competitive advantage. And so like, I like the misfits. And I think that probably the way I found my way to this and my whole, maybe again through my whole professional life, it has been about wanting to be heard, wanting to be, in charge of my own destiny, believing I had something worth saying and worth listening to. And like, I think that, with Addie specifically, of course, it spoke to me when lightning struck in these brain scans. And like, I'm just asking the obvious question of how the hell are we not doing anything with this? And like, it just became clear it needed a champion. The science was there. Science always knows the answer. Sometimes we as humans take a while to catch up. But I think that more than that, choosing to be an entrepreneur, choosing to do it on my own terms has been the misfit really all the way through, and just embracing that piece of me. And actually, as I've been so lucky to build incredible teams, like, success is not a solo sport. You know it, right? Like, who are the people that come and ride with you and share in this mission and passion? And like, really what I looked for and probably found were the people like me who didn't quite fit. We didn't quite fit in the conventional environment. Like, we would be high performers because we were, prideful and competitive and all of those things. But like, we were completely uninspired. And my thesis, my very first company I called Slate, truly clean slate. I'm doing it on my own terms. I bet I could find a bunch of other misfits like me, put us against a common challenge, let us show up exactly who we are, how we are, harness that individual strength, and we could do something extraordinary together. And it turned out we did. And like, that's really, I think part of it is just never compromising who I am.
Well, I have a two-for question here, and I want to ask it before I forget it. My first one is, how was your confidence in your success? How did that impact your romantic relationships?
Oh.
And two, how did you find the right fit for your team? That has
Yeah.
always been an issue for me and for a lot of people that I know in building a team, is finding people that they don't have to have the perfect vision, your a go obsession with what it is, but finding people who are good at their jobs at minimum. Where are you finding people that
I love this
you feel
question.
confident?
Okay, I'm going to answer the romantic one separately, because I thought, you can imagine with the name of your podcast, I had a lot of thoughts about what are all the things I learned to make, including romance. So we got to answer that. With my team, I'm going to tell you, there's this, I've never hired for the pedigree, for like the perfect resume that they've done the thing, et cetera. I've always hired for the motor. And there's something that happens when you're like in a conversation. I have a favorite interview question, and it is, what is the first way you made money? And I like to watch people explain to me,
Writing
like,
this down.
right? They are like, okay, well, I got out of school and I first worked for so-and-so. And I watch them and I see if they catch themselves. They're like, but that's not the first way I made money. And like, it's the stories of making the flyers and putting them in all the neighbors' mailboxes that you would do every odd job and stuff. That really is what I'm looking for. Like, how early did that motor turn on? Because that motor, if it turned on, is going to probably be there most all of their life. And they have an enormous capacity to learn. I've been so blessed at this point, doing these weird and unusual and taboo things, to have met such incredible people like you, people who've been so successful. They've done something really special. And if I were to say they have one common trait, it is this curiosity to learn every single day of their life. Like, they never think they've figured it all out. They like want to keep learning. And that's that motor too, like that curiosity, that learning. That's how I've picked my best people. Have I picked, is my batting average perfect? Absolutely not. But I had this conversation one time. I have to tell this story with Adam Carolla on his podcast, and he was obsessed at the time with how they picked the dogs, like dogs that can either sniff drugs, or at that time they were talking about sniff, right? So how do you
Okay.
pick? Because like
Yep.
some are German Shepherds and some are Beagles and some are this. And he's like, but I don't understand. Like, how can it be? And he got in touch with somebody and they gave him the answer. And they said, here's how we pick them. We go to the pound and we see which one's jumping the highest. And
Wow.
we know this is the dog with the greatest motor, with the greatest enthusiasm, and we're going to teach them to do this thing. And like, I love that story so much because I really think in a way, like I always want to pick the person jumping the highest.
Yeah. Oh my God, I love this. I remember when we hired our first intern at the Previver. I went to my alma mater, went to the University of Maryland. I interviewed probably 50 people. I reached out to the sorority that I was a part of, shout out Delta Gamma, and really went to the career center, interviewed all of these kids. I even interviewed the president of my sorority, like the one at the time. And I was so shocked at how unmotivated they were to even respond to an email, to get to a call on time. And it's exactly what you said. The person that we ended up landing on, she wasn't unqualified, but she certainly didn't have the pedigree, like you said. She ended up being the game changer for our organization, taking us to the next level with her creativity, her work ethic, just being a sounding board for me.
Yeah.
And to this day, I ask her to be included in absolutely every big decision that we make, just because I see her truly as an equal, an intellectual equal, someone who, again, like you said, has that desire and that drive. And I think that's a conversation for another time of how insatiable that can be. And that's also an unhealthy thing.
Yes, that is fair.
That's another podcast episode. But yeah, finding good employees is so difficult. And I also try to remind people, keep them. Do whatever you can to keep them. It's the same thing, we talk about in all kinds of businesses. It is so much more expensive to replace a customer than to keep them. And so many people just are thinking about the bottom line. And I'm like, I would bankrupt myself to keep somebody that makes my life easier.
Yeah. Same. Agreed. It's so true. I mean, I'm my secret weapon is the team, right? Like it's unbelievable, like how incredible they have been. And even to get the company back, like, can you imagine? Like everybody moved on. I mean, in a way, like I didn't know what I was doing. They started, and I remember calling people, and I can remember calling one gentleman and his wife is like, why is Cindy calling? Oh no, what are you about to do? And sure enough, like he came back, and like what a gift to me that like they would drop what they were doing and come back. But I think it is because of that culture we created, because of that permission to be themselves and to really sort of work the next job they were destined for, as opposed to like the job they were already qualified for. I think that's how you just continue to grow and do extraordinary things together.
Well, I love that. And now I have to hear your answer to the romantic relationships, because this is a hard one. And it's something that I talk to, a lot of people about, because success can be emasculating to the wrong person. And I'm sure that has been part of your experience. I think for any woman, no matter, when you started a business, if you're just someone that has a drive to do more and be more, you're often labeled as too much. Yeah. So how have you navigated that?
I mean, this was hard for me, honestly. Like I think about no question, all of this comes with a lot of sacrifice, right? And the sacrifice for me was really a personal life for so many years. I am divorced. I'm engaged now again after many years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And really, like, there's no question that was a big piece of it, right? Is I think in some ways for the drive that people were attracted to, it became the thing that was the hardest to take, because I do have no work-life balance. I live and breathe kind of what I do. It's a big part of who I am. And like to love me in a way is to be part of this and part of this mission and everything else. And I think it is hard for people can you imagine I was single when I was going through with Addie, when the media called it female Viagra. And I would be on airplanes and men would be like, what do you do? And I would say, oh, I'm in healthcare. Oh, well, what in healthcare? And like, we would get to that moment and I would say female Viagra because that was every headline. And they would say female Viagra. I'm female Viagra. And I was
Oh
like, hey,
my vomit.
if I had a nickel for every man that had told me that, I wouldn't have had to sell my company for $1 billion. And then the conversation would just stop.
Oh my God.
But it's true that there's like a lot of layers of that. And I do understand like that is atypical societally, et cetera. And like my real realization late in life is you have to pick somebody comfortable in their own skin. Like is that the holy grail of life? I think it kind of is.
Yeah.
Right? Like at that moment in time when you truly are comfortable with who you are in this world, and there's a contentment in that, right? Like this is me. And like I'm doing great. And Justin, my fiance now, is like, if you could put that in a textbook, he'd be the picture next to it. He is absolutely who he is to his core. Like all that I do is just exciting and fun, and he gets to cheer for. He cares about the mission alongside of me, but like he's got all his own world and his own, identity in it. And that was hard to find. It took me until much later in life to find that partner.
Well, that is such a heartwarming thing because I think a lot of people feel like they're never going to find it, or
Yeah.
they're trapped in a marriage or a relationship that they can't get out of. And
Right.
I think that it really is important for somebody who is entrepreneur minded, someone who is ambitious, to do exactly like you said, to find somebody confident, because if you don't, they're going to resent you for the rest of your life. And you can't be in
Yeah.
a partnership like that because it will infect your life. It will infect your business. And,
Yes.
every psychologist will tell you that the most important person is your partner. It's like we talked about, in the very beginning,
Ew.
choosing right. And wow, do we hop into marriage? Do we pressure women to get into relationships before their frontal lobe has fully developed? I mean, I can honestly say that I do not feel like I became an adult until I turned 36 years old. And
Yeah.
it took me a very long time, I think, for my lobes to fully develop, for me to come into myself. It took having children, panicking, having, quarter life crisis, going through all of that. And fortunately, I have an incredible husband who I was able to navigate that with, but that's not always easy. And I think that it often leads to people's relationships ending because
Yes.
when you are reinventing yourself, figuring out who you are, building a business, having a vision, maybe changing that direction, pivoting to something else. And this person who probably isn't like you is saying, oh my God, I cannot take like the chaos.
Right.
And having somebody that's either there to ride and grow with you, or finding somebody who's a better match. And, so many women I talk to are in the same position as you. Maybe they were married before in a long-term relationship and then later in life found that person.
That
So,
I really, it's such as I'm like, if my story is anything for anyone else, like they are out there for sure. My brother, I have two big brothers. I love them dearly. And my biggest brother would always say, lucky in business, unlucky in love, lucky in business, unlucky in love. Like that was really his story for me. And like, I would always think, God, I guess that's right. Like, I guess you can't have like the full thing. Like that's the sacrifice that all of this other pursuit came with. And like to see, today, like him watch me and Justin, he's like, wow, like it, that it just for you, it had to come a lot later, and it had to come with somebody who wasn't competing with you, who wasn't resentful of the accomplishment. In the Pink Ceiling, I mentor younger women in business, and a woman came in and she'd made 30 under 30.
wow.
And that day she came in, she was so excited, and her boyfriend broke up with her. And this was like the guy she thought she was going to marry.
Right.
And she came into my office, in tears, and is like, is this how it's always going to be? And I'm like, it's not. When you're going to find this is the profile though, right? Like this is what you got on your before. And, she's happily married, has a baby. It's like, it's all worked out beautifully, but like, it wasn't right. Like that there was going to be that resentment there for everything. And she never needs, the worst thing that I see happen even with friends is that they start to shrink away from all of their potential and greatness, really to appease somebody else's insecurity.
Right. Well, I don't know your brother. I don't want to discredit your brother, but I think that both of his premises were wrong. You are not lucky in business.
Thank
You
you.
earned your place.
Yeah, that's fair. Yes.
And
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
you have earned your spot in love. You are the person that you are, deserving of love. And I am so, so happy to hear that, because it's not the story that everybody gets. And I love to hear a fairy tale ending.
That's good. Thank you.
I think this is a perfect place to pivot to, one of our last questions here on the Learn Too Late podcast. So I started this podcast. It was very much a shower principle thing where I was struggling with like gum issues, and you ended up having, research, found finally something that worked for me. And this is so silly why this was the inspiration for me. But I just remember thinking, God, like I learned this too late. Why? I talked to 500 dentists, why did no one suggest this small little tiny introdontal brushes that solved all of my world's problems? And it clicked in my head, and I said, wow, like there are so many things that I wish I had learned sooner. And we have this whole, meme culture on the internet of, I was today years old when I learned XYZ. So I would love to hear, what is something that you learned too late in life and you would like to share with our audience? What is those pearls of wisdom that you may have for them?
Jeez. This is there's so many things we've touched on. Learn too late in love, learn too late about, being fully yourself. I think for me, it is this idea that mentors sit to your left and right at all moments in time, and you need to invite them in to teach you something new. I'm going to give an example of how I learned this. When we built our first company, we had this product that surgeons used, and I can remember it was new, so all of them were experimenting with their techniques. And we went to the first medical conference, and we'd filmed all those different techniques, and we showed it. And this whole room, you can imagine, of surgeons who tend to have an ego, right? They were watching. And if you looked at the room, 99% of the room was leaning away from it with their arms crossed. And they were kind of shaking their head like, no, that's not how you do it. That's not how you do it. And 1% of the room was leaning forward like, I never thought of that. And who was the 1%? They were the top surgeons in the world. And so I think that the lesson is, how do you constantly challenge yourself every morning you wake up? How boring would it be if you thought you knew everything? What's the new thing that you're going to learn today?
Well, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing everything about your story. I mean, I am so inspired. As a mini entrepreneur, compared to the things that you have accomplished. But I think that your story is just such an inspiration to, if you have a good idea, you run with it, have confidence in yourself that you can do it, even if people are, like you said, laughing you out of the room. If you have vision, keep at it, be bold. And maybe the most important thing, stay quirky, because you lose that. And I think as we get older, we tend to get more serious. We don't celebrate our accomplishments. I just did this post, I hit 100,000 followers on Instagram, and I'm like, I am going to fucking celebrate this. Like, I am so sick of thinking that I am too old, or like, this is so silly. Like, that's not it.
Never.
And I think you are such a great example of that. Stay true to who you are. Be bold, and you never know, maybe you're selling your company for $1 billion and getting it back for free.
I can't wait to watch it. Absolutely.